this week I saw an article about Mike Johnson, who is actually the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. Now, this article is by The Hill, and it was about the Johnson pushes back against criticism of his Christianity. These people don't know me. And we're talking about how do you control enemies. And I think that this just really spoke to me about his attitude towards haters or his enemies and how he responded to it. Now it talks about that they're attacking him because you're meant to be they're saying he's a far right, and he's going about trying to chase for white Christian nationalism, and there's a lot of haters for him because he is a conservative and a proud Christian. And Dr. Rod's going to talk about his recent presentation as well. But it was something that he said. Let me find. Let me find where that topic, where it was. He said, look, there are entire industries built on tearing down people like me. I understand that comes with the territory, and we're not fazed by it. He's actually talking about his family, how his family are also affected and everything like that. I think there's kind of two things in there that were actually really key. Is first of all, there's an understanding of look, I know it just comes with the territory. If I'm going to be a leader, if I'm going to try to push boundaries, if I'm going to try to take ground and grow an organization, whatever it is in leadership, we need to understand there is going to be opposition. We say in Australia, the tall poppy syndrome, right? You stand up amongst the crowd and someone's going to want to cut you down, right? It just comes with the territory, as he says. So as a leader, we just need to know. We need to emotionally and physically prepare ourselves of this just comes with the territory. And then the second thing that he said was, and we're not fazed by it. There's one thing of just taking it on and going, yes, I know that that's part of the territory, but still getting worried, still getting affected, still having anxiety, still allowing, as people say, is like allowing them to live rent free in your head, right? Don't let it faze you. Now, I know that can be hard because I mentioned at the start of this, I overanalyze things. I sometimes go a little crazy. I'm not saying you should never be fazed by it. I think the reality of this is don't let that affect you for a long term. In the moment, I go through this. I'll mull over it for the day. I can't believe that person said this. I can't believe this. Maybe an hour or maybe a day or whatever. But I go through my process, right? I'll go through it. I'll mull over it and kick the dirt, so to speak, and everything like that. But look, if it's a major thing, I'll reach out to someone like Dr. Rod or maybe one of my other mentors that or my psychologist or whatever, and talk it out. If it's an extreme thing, I just let's work through this because I don't want this to affect me long term. But we can't be fazed by it. So we need to get our support network around us. We need to build up our tools. I think I mentioned this last week, but Dr. Rod, I said to him and my psychologist, I'm going through these personal challenges, but I haven't actually been speaking to them as much lately because they've helped me so much that now I kind of know their answers to things that there's been some of these things they're this little voice in my head, on my shoulder, the angel voice telling me the right thing to do in these moments. So we need that support. We need to build the tools so we can handle these situations. Dr. Rod, how do you not get fazed by things?
Well, have confidence in the worldview that you hold. So in order to do that, you need to know what your worldview is. So mine happens to be a Christ-centered, Bible-based worldview. And the more research I do, the more confident I am that that is the best description, if you like, of reality. So the best way in which to process the reality of the world around me is through the lens of a Christ-centered, Bible-based worldview. Now, that is why I'm not fazed. It gives me confidence, but not arrogance. And this is what I see in Mike Johnson. I see a man who is confident in his Christianity. He's confident in his worldview, but he's not arrogant about it. And in fact, I love that phrase he used, "They don't know me," because it's actually true.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, that's
who
right.
in the world had heard of Mike Johnson a month ago?
Yeah. Actually, I know you're about to get on to talk about his speech, but I just want to kind of jump in there because what you're saying is actually the next part of this article. He goes on to say, but listen, what I believe in is, and he states out the things that he believes in, right? Let me highlight this for the viewers at home, right? He says, I believe in the founding principles of this country, and he goes on the individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law. Like, he just kind of emphasized, like, this is what I believe in. It was exactly what you're saying, Dr. Rod, is like, we need to know what we believe in and be able to stand firm to our principles and who we are and what we're called to and things like that. That's how we not let things faze us.
Oh, absolutely. That's knowing about your own worldview, what the view that you hold and why you hold it. And it should give us confidence, but it's no excuse for arrogance. And I don't see any arrogance at all in anything that Mike Johnson has said publicly, even the way in which he responded to what really was a fatuous op-ed article that he was asked to respond. It was fatuous. It made these outrageous claims about Christian nationalism, and I mean, it was quite a joke, really, when I read it. But you see, it's typical of those who are on the left, because it was just full of name-calling. Yeah. There was nothing factual in it. I mean, I wouldn't argue about truth here. We're talking about facts. Mm-hmm. I love actually what he said. You quoted that, I believe, in human flourishing, etc. A little bit further down in the interview, he says this, and I actually think this is really, really important. He says, I believe in the sanctity of every single human life. Yeah. So I come to Congress with the personally held convictions, but guess what? So do my 434 other colleagues in the House. Everyone who comes to Congress with their deeply held convictions. And we all do. And I know a lot of people say, well, I don't take my values into the House, or I don't take my values into the classroom, or whatever. I don't take my values into the boardroom. Rubbish. Mm-hmm. If you believe that, you're a fool. Yep. You always take them with you, because they're the lens that you have on all the time, through which you process the world around you. And I think he's being perfectly honest. And I agree with him. The very basic principle in Christianity and in some other religions as well is that every single human being has value. He says, my fundamental belief is in the sanctity of human life. And that's going to influence everything he thinks and says and does. But I love it how he responds, because he doesn't get angry, upset, or arrogant. He just says, look, this is my fundamental belief. This is what drives me. And guess what? Everybody has such a belief. It won't necessarily be the same belief, but everybody has a belief. And I mean, for some, it might, their fundamental belief might be, I just simply need to get as much power as I can and hang on to that until the day I die. Maybe that's what motivates some people in the Congress. Who knows? Looking at the way in which some people behave, that might be true. But that was such a disarming response. To say on the one hand, well, look, I'm unfazed by all of that, is saying, look, I've got confidence in the worldview that I hold, and I'm not going to be shaken. Yeah. The fact that he says all of this criticism comes with the territory, he's absolutely right about that. That's just a statement of fact. So he's clearly faced up to that and said, well, you know what? If I'm going to take on this particular role, I'm going to be criticised. In fact, there'll be plenty of people who probably hate me. There'll be those who accuse me of trying to implement some kind of Christian nationalism philosophy. I guarantee he won't. And I can guarantee 99% of those who are accused of this Christian nationalism, that's the furthest thing from their mind. But what they are trying to do is to embody or embed within the culture and the law and the practice in America those things that have stood America good over so long a period of time. And, even the founding fathers, they never set out to establish some kind of theocracy. And I follow a lot of leading Christian thinkers in the United States, and many of them, I think, would be accused, along with Mike Johnson, of being Christian nationalists, but they're not, because they never suggest that we should remove the fundamental principle of that separation between state and church. And the separation, of course, means that the state must never be given the power to determine a state religion.
Yeah.
There are plenty of countries in the world where there is a state religion, never in America, and I know of no Christian thinker who argues along those lines. It's just a straw man which has been developed by those who have a different worldview. And Mike Johnson's right. There are going to be people, probably even within his own party, who hold a different worldview. And I think we'll see someone who's fairly pragmatic. He's not going to try to overturn a whole raft of legislation. And Christians who believe that he will and that even he can are just wrong. They're just wrong.
Yeah.
In the same way that one Christian business person can't shift the whole business paradigm. You get enough of them together and you reach a tipping point. But I've never come across any of these Christian thinkers yet who are advocating that we do away with the separation between the state and the church, because they know that ultimately that will lead to great evil. And we see it in those nations where there is state religion. Almost always it leads to great evil.
Yeah. So kind of going back on our point of like, how do you control the enemy or your enemies is, well, expect it and don't be fazed by it.
Exactly. You disarm them.
How don't you get fazed by it? One thing you've mentioned today is like knowing your values, right? Yep. Like that's really important. We talk about knowing your values because that's how you can make your decisions. Well, this is what I'm basing everything on. This is my values. And if you don't know your values, you're going to be following someone else's values. They're going to put their values on you. So you need to know your values. How do we handle the enemy? How do we control the enemy? Don't be fazed by it. Know your values, know what you stand by, and stay on your guiding principles. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.